Hello, everybody. How is going? Let me know if you can hear me. You can see my screen. Okay. So we can start. Hopefully, everything is fine in terms of volume and everything. Yeah. So first of all, let me ask: is anybody there? Is anybody live here? Can you hear me? There are 9 people, so somebody could answer. But anyway, okay, somebody has a little heart, so perfect. Anyway, so good news. It seems the price went up, right? Everybody was freaking out and being concerned, afraid. So one of the good things about the power law, right? Because many people are telling me, they have all kind of misconceptions. There is a group of people that know more, and other people that have still very strong misconception. Hopefully with time, we're going to resolve these misconceptions. Still, I need to do a lot of work from my side, maybe having a place where people can go and learn about it, like small little lectures that I intend to work on. But also I will try to have more of these weekly meetings, so we can meet and ask questions, and we can resolve some of the doubts or some of the misconceptions. But to me, one of the most important things about the power law, personally, right? I know that I am the one that created this understanding, right, or discovered it. So it's different for me than for other people, I guess. But I am also like anybody, like a human, so I have my own doubt even about the things I know or discover about Bitcoin. But and it's a process, right? It took me 12 years to arrive to all these components. I didn't have all of them together, right? Just pieces. But once we have put together, and there'll be other things that we will discover about Bitcoin. But in general, I think this is one of the most complete and most exhaustive ways of seeing what Bitcoin is, what it does, not just in price, but even with just the general philosophy about Bitcoin. It's a network that it grows in a certain way, that is resistant to manipulation, from large countries. So all these back and forth about the politics and about if this person being elected, it almost hurts my heart, because if you really believe, if you really understand, because it's not a question of believing, it's not a religion, it's more like science. This is what we are trying to understand, how Bitcoin works. You would never say things like that. Yeah, locally, the election can influence maybe for a couple of days the price of Bitcoin, but not long term. It doesn't matter. And sure, there are politics, and there are there is a registration, and there are regulations that can be more friendly and less friendly, even just for that particular country. Like, I hate that in the United States, if you want to open an account in Bybit or any other exchange, that if you want to do something, like some of the things that you do on exchanges, you got treated like a third world person, because they say, oh, your IP tell us that you're from one of these country that is basically Zimbabwe, North Korea, all the crazy country like that, and United States in that list. We don't do business with you. It is ridiculous. And many other things, like we cannot short Bitcoin. Maybe there are times where you want to short Bitcoin. Why not? You are free to do whatever you want, and for sure you don't want the government deciding that for you, or other things, right? So it's horrible that we have all this kind of legislation. Taxes would be great if we didn't have to pay taxes on something like Bitcoin. It will help with people saving money. That it's great. So anyway, yes, there are legislations that can affect the Bitcoin, but over the long term, Bitcoin doesn't care, because it does its own thing. It has its own scale invariant behavior. So the power law gives you a philosophy. It's much more than just a model. It's a philosophy of Bitcoin, what Bitcoin is, what it's doing, how it's growing, how it's interacting with the world. If you go deep in the power law, you start to discover all these very beautiful, very powerful philosophy about Bitcoin that is very much in line with all the other things that people like sailors say. That is a city. Power laws are present in how cities grow and behave. That is resilient, to different events. But basically, Bitcoin doesn't care, right? The only budget of money. All kind of different things that you have a basis to think and again, not believe. I don't think is the right word, but make a very good scientific hypothesis, or if you want to call it a bet, in the sense that it's a reasonable bet, like when you cross the street and you look left and right and say, okay, I can cross the street, right? So we do this kind of things all the time in life, right? It's all about even the simplest thing of eating some food. You believe that the food we're eating is not poisoned, because you produced it or whatever. If you go to a restaurant, there are regulations in the restaurants that make the food healthy, and probably it's not poisoned. It doesn't have food poison. It can happen, but we make decisions like that based on our prediction of the future, based on rational arguments, right? And this is what is behind the power law, that we have something to trust, that this system has behaved in a certain way for all these years, and that is reflective of Bitcoin being unique and being different from all the other assets, because it has this goal of becoming the monetary system of the world. And the Bitcoin power law, it's a mathematical and scientific demonstration that is probably true, right? We can never demonstrate something 100%, but it aligns with this intuitive understanding that many people have of Bitcoin. So hopefully, it's something that helps you during this time when the price is down and everybody is panicking or becomes very concerned or even afraid, that when we have this little dip. So if you have a graph like this, you have an indicator like this, and you're looking things from a different perspective, say, look, it's actually perfectly fine for the price to correct a little bit, and nothing is happening crazy, because we should not even be there according to what happened in the previous cycles. This is, like you see, this is the power law, this is the support line, here the yellow line. I draw these kind of to indicate where the price could, if we cross this line, the price becomes overvalued, and we have, all this other information from liquidity that help us also to understand patterns and what is going on. So instead of doing TA, because many people think that this is TA, it's not TA. It doesn't have anything to do with TA. We are using a complete different approach that is based on what a scientist will do to analyze a system like Bitcoin. We are using this mathematical approach of regression and identify patterns through the power law. We are using correlation between data. We calculate the probabilities. What is missing in a graph like this, maybe we should add it. It's confidence level. We can add that, because these are how you should do it more properly. Say, okay, this is my prediction, but I can add a range of probability where I feel confident that the values should be around these. Sometimes we don't do that to simplify the graphs, but in theory we could add it as a hands-on. And so we try to do things in a very different way than what these TA people do, because many times they do TAs basically, even if they sometimes use some mathematics like moving average and things like that, it's mostly about kind of patterns that people identify by high. When people really actually went back and study the stats of these, the Golden Cross or other things like that, they found out that they don't get better than charts. Some of them are better than others, but in general, it's mostly like people seeing shapes in the clouds. So, you think there is a pattern. People focus on when that particular TA indicators worked, and they don't look at all the other time it didn't work. And even when they make videos, there are plenty of videos. I follow almost everybody in the field, and just to learn how they interact with the people. There are people that are followed by thousands and thousands, and they mention, look, the Golden Cross, that means this. And then a few days later happen exactly the opposite of what they say it should happen, But people don't pay attention because they don't go back to that. I don't know, maybe it's entertaining. I don't know. We're trying to focus on what is scientifically valid, what is validated. We can even say, look, these are is valid as this in terms of probability. This level of confidence that we are going to behave in this particular fashion. So one of the indicators that we are using right now that I think is very, very useful is this global liquidity indicator. I explained many times. I can put in the comment of a main article that is behind this method. So let me do that in a moment. So because many times when I do these studies, I actually go deep and then I try to summarize it. And I have an article explaining the basis. It's not yet a scientific article. I do want to publish these as scientific articles, but it's taking me longer than I thought. So I'm going to put in the chat the article so you can actually look at it, because I'm trying to explain the methodology, how I arrived to certain conclusions, etc. But basically, I created a model of liquidity. I took, and you can look in the article and see what is based on. I'm using many, many different parameters, mostly bank activities, but also M1 and M2s of different countries, not just the United States. Now, one thing missing, because we can always improve, right? We can always add more information, thinking this is how science works. It's a never-ending project. Different weights, because right now, all these things are weighted equally, and it could be a limitation of the model because maybe United States has a bigger impact, than some smaller country, but it's something for the future. So for right now, basically I put all together these different parameters that are about global liquidity. And many times you do see other people discussing these things, but so far I didn't see one single person that made a model to explain how this global liquidity affects the price. What you can see many times is the graph of the global liquidity and then the graph of the price, and with your eyes you're supposed to see patterns, and it's a useful thing to do it and has its own validity. But remember, many times our eyes confounds us. We think, oh, look, there is a peak there, maybe there. It's a good starting point, but it's never the end of a story, because many times if there was another place where we didn't synchronize, we tend not to see that. Our mind always want to find patterns, and many times the patterns are correct and other times they are not, right? We see Jesus on a toast, because we connect with dots, and this is why we use these other tools. Like we use mathematics, we use statistics. So one of the things I wanted to see is actually, what if I plot Bitcoin, basically as the things that I want to predict, the Bitcoin price, and then I plot on the x-axis the global liquidity. Do they have a relationship, right? Are they correlated? And can I use one to predict the other? Particularly, I want to use global liquidity to predict the price of Bitcoin. This is what I did. And I think if you know of anybody else that did that, show me, because I would like to learn, and compare what I did with what they did, but I don't see anybody else has done that. And this is what we get, right? And this is explained in the article how I did it. It's not a simple relationship like a power law. I was expecting maybe something like that, because when you have something as simple as a power law, then the model is much more robust and reliable. So it's something much more complicated. There is a relationship. It's actually pretty evident, and it works both during the bubbles and long term. One of the things that we can see is kind of a curve like this. So it means actually that the influence of macro effects on Bitcoin is becoming smaller. It was much stronger in the beginning. So it doesn't have that big leverage. And in general, the relationship between other assets like NASDAQ or SP 500 is much more linear. Like, if you have a certain change in liquidity, you will see that change directly proportional to these other assets. But with Bitcoin, it's not like that. It's much non-linear. So basically, liquidity comes in Bitcoin, and then we multiply the effect of it. And this multiplying effect was much bigger early on than now. But it's difficult to come up with an equation. So you do an approximation. You basically, I don't know if people know, there is this thing called Taylor expansion in mathematics, where basically you can approximate any complicated function with adding more and more polynomials. So x squared, x cubed, x4. Basically, anything you give me, any crazy function, I can add more and more of these terms, and I can make it more and more, closer to the original function. The problem with that, it's at a certain point, you're basically approximating the noise, and you're not approximating the signal. So the question is, where do you stop, right, in this expansion? And you have something that is kind of a representation of a relationship between these two quantities that reduces the noise and emphasizes the signal. So that is our challenge when we do these models. And so, with the power law, it's so clear, right? It's that beautiful straight line. It's it's so simple. This is why it's striking, and this is why it's so powerful. With this model, we don't have it. And so take it with a grain of salt. That is the bottom line. And so basically we get this purple line. The purple line is the model. So how do we interpret it? Is basically if a price was only due to the relationship between liquidity and Bitcoin price, then we will get the purple line. And you can see that purple line is below the white line, that is the real price of Bitcoin. And so when you do something like this, the next thing is say, okay, do I see some patterns that are real, because we can even test it statistically. It's something that has happened often in the past. We can go as deep as you want. But I didn't do much statistics because it's something that we can do. But right now, I'm focused mostly, let's say, on the general trend and the general behavior. One of the things I'm noticing that, and we can do it together. You see, look at this. Every time we're ready for a bull market, we add an excess in liquidity. That basically the purple line was above a white line. So that kind of makes sense, right? Because also when we do this analysis, we always try to understand the meaning. That is, again, something that doesn't happen with TA, because many times say, oh, this crosses there. Sometimes it does make sense, but most times it's like, why? Why should these be relevant? But in this case, we can see what is the relevance, right? Because it means that there was enough liquidity to support the existing price. That is what I'm expecting for a bull run to happen, that we do have a liquidity necessary. So I will not say that the global liquidity drives the bull run. It's just that it needs to be there. We need to have enough liquidity to actually for the bull run to start. So it's great because, it's kind of the best of both worlds. In a sense, we are saying hey, Bitcoin is going to do its own thing, but we do need to have conditions, and so we have basically almost like an alert system that tell us, okay, well, look, liquidity is building up. Bitcoin is going to use some of that liquidity to support the bull run that is going to happen. This bull run are associated with the halving, but not in the usual way that some analysts propose, like creating supply shocks. All the narrative is wrong. It's wrong because even today somebody replied to one of my comments. There are 1,000 Bitcoins being sold every day, back and forth. In an average day, and go and see how many Bitcoins we are producing by mining. It's a very small fraction relatively to that. So reducing that number even more, it's not going to impact anything. So it's a very bad way of thinking that reducing the production of Bitcoins through the halving is what causes the bubbles. I don't know why people bought that argument when Plan B came out with it, because it's nonsense. What his good contribution was in indicating the importance of the halving. Other people did it before, but he made the halving a big important element in understanding the evolution of the price in Bitcoin. And we made an entire video. I can give you a link to the video. I don't know, maybe most of you have watched that video, but we have a nice video where we explain why we have bubbles. So if it is, because it's a natural question, right? If it is not the shock, created by created by the halving and the reduction in production, what causes the bubble, right? And so we may actually have a video for that. We have this entire series about the power law. Very nice video that my son made. And here, this is the link. Okay, so when you have a time, you can watch this video. It's called Why Bitcoin Has Its Bubbles, right? So, and we have a different idea, different theory. Mostly, it's a mixture between expectations, that something is going to happen during this. It's almost like Christmas, right? People get excited about Christmas. They spend more than usual. It's kind of almost like a ritual. And also real physical innovation that happens because, if you read and listen to the video, we mentioned Moore's law. People mining operations need to update their machines, and this is a kind of a natural time scales. They need to be ready for this halving because the halving does affect them more than affects the price itself. And so listen to the video. There is an entire theory that explains why we have imbalance. But you see, what this indicator shows that we need to have the right conditions for the bubbles to happen. That is, we need to have enough liquidity. And that is, you can see, I'm not showing you just one example where it worked, all three bubbles. We don't have a lot of bubbles, unfortunately. And so, it's a kind of weak statistics, but at least every single time we needed to have this liquidity available to start the bubbles, right? That, if you think logically, makes sense. That needs to be like that. And so you see even here. And in fact, also, you can see that when the opposite happens, when the price goes above the purple line, that is a sign that we are entering in an area where very likely the price will collapse, right? Because and these are, you see this shading in green and red indicates that, because basically at this point you see how fast it goes. It's almost like you can expect a power to happen there, right? If it goes very, very fast up. All this, by the way, is exponential. This when the price becomes exponential when we leave the support line, this yellow line. Bitcoin goes exponential up. I actually recently demonstrated that is the case. I was able to show that very closely represents an exponential. It's even more of an exponential when it comes down, like you can feed it. So it's not perfect, right? Because an exponential will look like a straight line. So it's not a perfect straight line in this graph, because this graph we are taking the log of a y-axis, and so any exponential will look like a straight line. So a straight line here, it's pretty good fit. And same thing here. And this straight line is much faster than this straight line. But the net result is that the price goes back to the support line. And so it's almost like the bubble didn't exist. But you can see at the top, there is almost like, we will call it a decoupling in physics. So you have two things that were kind of coupled before, very connected to each other, but now this one is doing his own thing and this other one is doing his own thing. This thing is driven by crazy FOMO. People go crazy, start to buy Bitcoin because whatever, they think that price is going up forever. It's going forever up, but not at this rate. It will reach millions of dollars within a few months if it did that. And you can see the liquidity is not there, and so the price crashes. So I think it's a very nice indicator that gives us a lot of information. I want to understand more about liquidity and go deeper. So one of the things I was mentioning as a title of the meeting is that how we have this bi-weekly, right now it's every 2 weeks, we Fred, Sina, Stefan, all the power lowers, if we want to call them like this, we all meet and discuss different things about the market. Next, not this one, but I don't know when we are going to have a next one, but on the 25th, this researcher, his name is Michael, so some of you know him, Howell. Okay, he's very famous. He's an expert in global liquidity. He even wrote a book. What is the name of his book? Do you remember what is the name of his book? Maybe somebody remember. I actually bought it. Let's check. He's very famous. He has interviews, but he has his own company. He has some experience in working with banks. It's called the Capitals Wars. Let me link it in the chat. So he wrote an entire book on this topic that is really cool, and there are many interviews if you Google him. But I was very impressed by him. I didn't know much about him, but somebody showed me a graph of liquidity, and he has his own proprietary way of calculating liquidity, and has these very, very precise cycles. Then he kind of finds a very like a simplification of these relatively complicated oscillations, of this way of calculating the dynamics of a global liquidity. And he has like an oscillation that he shows in the graph that is simplified by a sine wave, because there are mathematical methods where you can extract the main periodicities of an oscillation. And this is called Fourier transform. It's one of the mathematical tools that we use. And basically, what you get is how strong every component, right? Because you can break down your oscillation with many different contributions of periodicities. But the strongest peak is basically looks like peaks. You have a frequency and then energy usually. So that is not literally energy. It's basically a way of measure the relative contribution of every single oscillation. And so you will see, if you do a graph, you can do it with anything, even with Bitcoin. If you do it with Bitcoin, you will see this very strong 4 years periodicity coming out. And this is called frequency spectrum. You can do it in terms of frequency and period is one is the inverse of the other, right? And so it will show like a very strong line or peak in your spectrum, and that tells you, oh, there is a very strong periodicity there. And so the periodicity that he found in his data, it's 65 months. Now, what is the periodicity of Bitcoin? The periodicity of Bitcoin, because of its, maybe it has others, but the strong dominant one, because of the cycles, is 48 months. So we are comparing two different cycles, 65 and 48. Now, when you ask Howell, say, why 65? He doesn't know. It'll be really interesting to find out why it is 65. But I look at some of his graph. I'm not able to reproduce his proprietary quantity. I'm trying to understand it. But in his graph, I cheated a little bit. You can see the sine waves. You can see where the sine waves peaks. So it kind of being a sine wave, I know the period of the sine waves, and I know where it peaks because I look at this graph and kind of reproduced it here. So this is a red curve. It is this owl, we can call it owl cycle, right? The owl cycle. And the owl cycle is the red line. What are the other lines? It's basically, I took this one and I subtract the trend. So the white line here is basically the same pattern that you see here, but so like an oscillator, like you can see better the oscillations of this indicator relatively to the power law trend. And to be honest, I don't remember the blue line. I need to go back and check. And I did the same thing with the price relatively to the Bitcoin. So this is simply the oscillation of the price relatively to the power law. So you can see how everything interacts with each other. And then this red line, and I need to project it here. I did it by hand. Something you should not do. But then I can project it in the future. And what is interesting, it's that it's going to peak at around September of 2025. That is kind of close to where we are expecting the peak of Bitcoin being. Like that it should be around November of 25, when historically we usually see the peak of a cycle. And so the two are very, very close. And I think is a very bullish sign. And usually you can see, right, this didn't happen in the past. We didn't have any other place where this red curve, maybe kind of close here, right? But it was a little bit delayed. So it's nice because and this was a crazy bull run. It was one of the strongest bull run that we ever had, where we went up many, many times relatively to the general trend. And in that case, it was not really perfectly synchronized, but for sure the upper part, right, when we went up with the cycle and when we went up with the power law, with Bitcoin, the Bitcoin cycle, the two kind of not perfectly aligned, but at least in the same direction, right? And then I don't see any other interesting alignments. But actually the low component of this oscillation was aligning with the last throw, right? The last bottom of a cycle. But maybe it's coincidental or maybe not. But what we know is that since then, the Howell cycle goes up and then it should peak close to where we're expecting the Bitcoin cycle to peak. But I'm very curious about that. In fact, as when Howell will show up and they say, we agree on the 25th of September. So please come and watch that episode. We will have other announcement as we come closer to the show. Usually it's 9 a.m. PST. But, we will let you know. But that would be one of the questions. I want to show him what I did here and see what he thinks, But I'm sure it's a very, very bullish sign. He doesn't focus only on Bitcoin. He also talks about all the rest of the market, etc. So it will be nice to put it in a context. Also, he will explain us better how did he come up with these cycles, the relevance, how it's different from other people cycles, that they mentioned. So I didn't see anything as regular as these cycles, so I'm very curious to see why he thinks that it's actually something that is relevant and important. But it's interesting to listen to somebody that brings another angle. Now, I added these two lines because I usually never do this because this is very TA like, to connect the dots like with things you think are there. But if you take it as a grain of salt, where notice what happened, right? We reach the power law, we kind of stopped there. And these many people confuse because they don't have the language, they don't have a framework of the power law, so they think this is a bull run. No, this was a fake bull run. It was a fake bull run in the sense that the ETFs created a lot. First of all, they injected a lot of money into the, but it was not associated with global liquidity. It was only local liquidity. They injected a lot of money into Bitcoin through the ETFs. That also was followed by retailers FOMO and push the price away from where it should be, because the entire theory of the power law is that we think the typical almost textbook example should be these. And we had at least two cycles where we actually did exactly this. The price was almost following like textbook, the support line, this yellow line. See how the white line hug this until it's ready for the bull run. And the bull run usually is around November of that year when this happens, right? We skip 1 year. It's basically 2 years on the bottom line. Then see, for example, in this case, this was about, not exactly November, but in this case, closer to the end of 17, right? In this case, May, you can say started here, April, May, and then we go up for 1 year, and that usually that peak is always at the end of the year. It takes about 1 year to go up like that. So these are, well, actually, let me take it back. We can say, even if it looks a little bit flat, right? There were things happening there, right? The bull market started to kind of get ready. So you could say, because I'd rather keep the story consistent, right? So usually by the end of the year, so we spend about 2 years here. By the end of the second year, so in this case, 17th, we were ready for the bull market, right? It's not perfect. We can come up with a measure. We just say, okay, when you get this and this deviation, the bull market starts. But it looks like there is a very precise periodicity, like usually at the end of that second year, we are getting ready for the bull market. The bull market starts when it takes about 1 year. So it's much simpler story if you focus on these periodicities. It takes about 1 year to go up. Again, usually around the end of the year, November, December. When it peaks, it goes down. It takes another year to go down. See, from here to basically here, where the bottom is. See, it's much clearer and simple story if you can stick with this periodicity type of pattern. 2 years at the bottom, 1 year up through the exponential growth, 1 year down to the exponential decay. We have a bottom in this region. You have a lot of liquidity. We have 7 different indicators that in a moment I'm going to show you, where all these confluence of different signals come together and tell us how to identify tops and bottoms. It's like a full coherent story. And this story repeats again, again, at the end of, you could have said that basically, so the top here is here, because if you follow this periodicity, it basically was the end of it 2022. Here, when you are expecting this 1 year growth, right? And there was a little bit confusion because I think what happened during COVID, there was like an injection of liquidity due to all the stimuli and all these different things. There was a lot of liquidity created where usually we do not have liquidity. So it kind of push the price up. It creates, like this double top, like basically premature top where it should not have happened. But then we see the price corrected, and then we still had the top where we are supposed to have it, that is usually at the end of these 4-year cycles, right? So in this case, around November of 21. So it's very, very consistent picture, and I like to focus on these periodicity pictures. So if we, and maybe these other indicators will be better. So let's conclude this analysis. So in other words, we are thinking that because of so locally you can have these things that affect the price, right? The overall pattern still follows a very precise both overall trend and cyclic pattern, but locally you could have things that affect the price, but then usually there is a correction. So this time it was not COVID, this time it was ETFs. We don't have enough liquidity, price is correcting, liquidity is growing up. You see here, I can move this line so you can see better. Liquidity is going up. The model of liquidity is not just liquidity, it's actually how liquidity affects the price. So this model of Bitcoin price based on liquidity is going up, 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 and looks like significant the place where they will meet if they continue on this path. I draw these like a few weeks ago. Like if you go back some of my market reports of maybe even a month ago, I was already drawing these lines and say, oh, it looks like something significant will happen. What will happen if this pattern is maintained? That the Y line will be below and is basically going to create these similar conditions. It's not necessarily the beginning of a bull market, but it will be the necessary condition for the bull market to start. So then maybe it will take a little bit longer, maybe a few weeks, and then the bull market will start. And that's supposed to happen at the end of October. So it kind of aligns with everything else, because if you go to the other indicators that we have, like this one, for example, where we show some of these regularities, what these indicators show. So these indicators are the classical power law, where we have a white line, that is the power law, a support line. We have what is called the full model, that basically is an attempt to include all the things, the general power law trend, but also the bubbles and the support. So basically these full models try to replicate as close as possible all the things that we learn by studying the power law, because the power law itself doesn't tell you there is a bubble, but by using the power law as a reference, we can express the bubbles in terms of deviations from the trend, right? And then we can say, okay, when this deviation happens, we see here, for example, we can draw the deviations from the trend. Then we say, oh, look, they happen at very precise times during the year. They are happening a certain distance between each other. They have a certain height. The height is decreasing with time. Here, we did it in a way where we actually suppress the decrease in time, because we want to make an indicator that goes between 0 and 100. So we want all the heights the same. But this indicator is nice because you can choose a different way of expressing these deviations. So you can do it in this way, where you basically subtract the deviation from the trend, and then you express it as a percentage. So you take price minus the trend divided by the trend. And if you do it in that way, you see it shows how tall fact, if you go all the way, this bubble was before the halving, so usually we don't include in what we call the full model. We only model the 3 bubbles after the first halving. But if you look at even this particular bubble, that one was incredibly high, like thousands of percent. In fact, we can look. So this is expressed in percent, 1,500% relatively to the trend. So it was enormous. And then this one was more like 1,000%. So we went down, and this one was more like 500%, and this one was more like, if we go actually here where we say we think the real bubble was about 160%. So just a factor of few, right? And so it's really cool because then if you express everything in terms of these deviations, then you can see they happen at regular intervals. So for example, we have this indicator that is like a clock. So basically it's like the clock that sometimes I show on X, right? And by the way, I always do a shout out to this other analyst called Rational Root that was the first one thinking about putting Bitcoin on a circular map. What we did here, so we can compare it with these linear graphs, we took the sine wave of that circular map. So I can plot it as a function of time or linearly. And you say, well, Giovanni, it has also a negative component. Well, if I did a negative component, you will complain because the y-axis basically is the log of the price here. You will complain, say, oh, what does it mean, a negative price? So I took away what is called the absolute value. So I kind of flipped it. So imagine here you have like a sine wave, and then we go down, and I flipped it. So it looks like a bunch of bumps, right? But these bumps are becoming bigger and bigger. You see how they became bigger and bigger as we move in time, because basically they are supposed to represent the price of Bitcoin. The amplitude of a wave is the price of Bitcoin. And you see how here there are these little lines. These little lines are representing the full model. The full model is the red curve. Notice how the red curve is the straight line, right? Is power law in the middle. What is a simple model? You see how it is lower than the peak because it's supposed to represent the middle, so it's lower when we are close to a top, and the yellow line here, it's I'll show you a little bit bigger. The yellow line is a full model that is supposed to come close to the top, right? And you see it does come close to the top. The color coding here, instead of being deviation, like in the first graph, the deviations were proportional to the color was proportional to the deviation from the trend. In this case, it's time. So closer we are to 12. 12 here is really the end of the cycle in the terms of these 4 years cycle behavior. So it's not really the physical top. You can see it's why we have all these other indicators. It's more like when the red line crosses the orange line, the top happens. And so that will be more like 11 o'clock. So this clock is a 12 hours clock starting, we start with the top where it's 12, then 3 is the bottom, 6 is when it's not. Many people confuse, they think that this is the top. No, it's like a particular place in the cycle. It should be basically is the bottom of a sine wave. That corresponds to basically leaving the bottom behind. It's like 1 year. Every little quarter is 1 year. We leave a bottom behind. If we have 1 year from when we had the bottom. So we are getting ready for the bull market. So this is why we are marking. So we call it transition from bear to bull. It's almost like this is winter, going from the peak to the bottom, and this is like springtime, and this is like summer when the transition to the full bull happens, right? Is when things get heated up, and we are ready to start the bull market. Usually that, like we say, happens at the end of the second year. For us, it's going to be, for the future, it's going to be November 24. So in November, this hour 9 is going to happen. And this is usually when things become interesting, right? You see here, here, here. Right? This is why I like to compare all these things. And, these indicators really gives you a full picture. Oh, okay. Yeah, this was when things started to heat up. Oh, yeah, same thing here. Oh, yeah, same thing here. You see, very much consistent pattern. And you don't get confused by double tops, etc., because you're saying, okay, if a cyclic behavior is consistent, I'm expecting to find the beginning of a bull market here, not here, right? And then you identify, say, oh, what happened here? It seems that a price was like reaching a top. Well, it was a kind of a premature top, maybe due. So you start, see, it's not about, I'm not against making stories and trying to understand what happened with external event, but you need to have something to support the story. And if you do it in this way, you have all these other things that are happening, the cyclic behavior of Bitcoin, etc. Say, yeah, the real top was this one because it happened where every other top happened. This was a premature. So you don't get confused by other narratives that say, oh, the cycle was shorter, maybe is a sign the cycles are not so regular like the other to be. No, it was damn regular because we did have, notwithstanding this premature top, due to all that liquidity being available, we still had the top. So you start to, now, is this story better than the other one? I think so, because it's supported by evidence, while the other one not so much. And so it gives you a framework. I'm not saying it's unique, the only one that you should follow, but it's different from the other one, and I think maybe more consistent. And you have all the other indicators, right? So there is this cyclic behavior where the colors have to do with the timing. As you come close to the top, see, it's another way of confirming that we are crossing down. So you could say that is my top, we are crossing down the full model, that is the orange one. We have this timing that tell us where we are in the cycle. So, all these interconnected and self-supporting indicators. What is the significance of this one? This one is based on the fractal properties of Bitcoin, and is telling us, you can go deeper, but the bottom line is an indicator that when it's above this orange line, that is 0.5, is telling us we are following. Basically, we have a lot of momentum in the data. That is what you're expecting during bull market, because the price goes up in an exponential fashion. So you will expect this indicator to tell you we are in a type of price behavior, in a regime, you can call it, that is trend following. And this indicator, if it is above 0.5 and closer is to 1, more trend following, more consistent the behavior is. And you can see it is associated with these bull runs. So it's another, see how when we go to transition to full bull market, we always go above 0.5. And the opposite happened with the bear market, where it's closer to, is below 0.5. And in that case, the behavior of the price is what is called mean reverting. So it's oscillating, it's trying to find some kind of mean direction, but it's basically the power law. It's basically oscillating around the power law, because this is what it does. That is the trend that is following, but it's oscillating around that trend. So it's a really cool indicator of it. And then this is useful to see this decay, because this is the decay that allows us, it's very precise decay. Actually, you can show mathematically follows an exponential. That is another exponential in the data, where the peaks are going down in a very precise manner. And because they go in a precise manner, that allows us to make a prediction. This is why we have this prediction of 200,000. And also because we are looking at when the other peaks happen usually at the end of a second year, right? When the bull starts. It takes 1 year. When the bull starts, it takes 1 year. So you know where it's supposed to be. You can calculate the peak based on the decay. So that is the main assumption that we are using here. It's supposed to be about 80% from the trend. Remember, we talk about 1,500, basically percent. That was the deviation from the trend. Now it's supposed to be 80%, only 80%. And so that allows, so if you know what the trend is supposed to be at this period of a year, then that allows you to extrapolate and calculate. This is how we do it. And so please, if you rely on this chart to make some decisions or what you do, always understand what are the assumptions. Never rely on a number that is there. Try to understand it yourself. You can even reproduce it if you want. All what you need to know is what the price is going to be, and we have a formula for that at this period of year. That from the decay, and I wrote even an article for that you can read if you want. It'll go on my Medium, and you will find it. And you can go through the Medium because I gave you the. Let me do it for you. I'll give you the article so you can actually read it, and you can see the logic behind it, right? So how they arrived to these. It's called the article is called "A Scientific Approach to Estimating the Size of the Bubbles." Okay, because every time I do something, I try to justify it in terms of a precise reasoning and a precise in data. So here is the article that you can read. But basically, these are we are estimating. The top we are saying is supposed to be 200,000 based on this derivation and the time. And you can see also how cool it is that we do have also a projection for the clock, because also the clock, it's all mathematics, so we can project it in the future. And you see where this little cusp, right, that is that the technical word for that little geometrical thing here. So it's a cusp. This cusp, this intersection, right, between these bumps, is telling us where to expect the bull market to start, and that it's around November. But it's cool because do you remember how the liquidity and the price are supposed to meet each other, and so kind of converge, right? So that is the beauty of having all these indicators together, because they seem to converge and telling us the same story. These are Earth indicator right now is Earth is HURST is the name of a scientist. See, Hearst indicator. This Hearst indicator will need to change and go back above zero. About 0.5, right? Because we are expecting to be trend following when we start the bull market. So you can look at all these different indicators and say, whoa, all these things converge together. The liquidity converges. The bull run should start. And we can even follow it. So, okay, let's look at this one. So I'm going to, because it's cool to see this decay from a pedagogical point of view, and also seeing, okay, how big every other bubble was relatively to the trend. But the most useful way of representing this, because we have, see, if you go scroll down, you have many different ways of representing it. The best one is this decay adjusted, because basically what we did here, we corrected for that decay that we observe, and now this makes all the peak look the same. And the beauty of doing it in this way, see, even the first one, is that you have a range between 0 and 100, and you can use it almost like a risk measure, right? So what is the risk? Well, the risk is, and I know that maybe it makes some maxi upset to say that the risk of owning Bitcoin, because if you own Bitcoin, when you are here and the price is going to crash on you, well, you can think it as a risk because you want maybe to rebalance your portfolio and get some USDT, because if you get some USDT, and I'm not saying sell all your Bitcoin, sell some, 5%, 10%, something that you think you can live with. If the price crashes on you, you can use that cash to rebuy at the bottom when we reach that. And you can see how precise these indicators are. It's almost surgical. Look at this. Look at this. Okay. In this case, you got both. I got the first bubble because it doesn't care, right? You can say, well, okay, we are peaking and the deviation is so big that it could be a real peak, but because of the timing, I'm not expecting a peak there. What do I do? And you can say, well, let me still get some, rebalance a little bit and get, some of my gains. And, maybe you could have bought it here when it started to go lower, and you could have used that if you were focused enough. Or you could have waited and say, look, I also strongly think that timing is very important. So I'm going to wait for the real bubble, right? And you could have done both. It depends. You will not have been wrong with one or the other. But you have tools, right, that you put together. You're analyzing. You're using your focus. And some people say, look, all these is too much work for me. I don't want to do all that work. And then you're fine. Use the power law to inspire you, to give you confidence we're going up. Also, though, if you do DCA, for example, and you don't want to sell your Bitcoin, why not stopping buying Bitcoin? I'm not saying saving. Still be disciplined enough where if you put, $400, $300 every month aside to buy Bitcoin, when we come in this red region, and you can decide, right? Maybe when we cross 60, when we cross 70, look, it's too hot here. I'm probably getting a better deal if I wait. Now, what if it's different this time? I don't know. I started to buy Bitcoin since 2012, and it was never different. And I remember I was under the shower. As I mentioned this like an old person, all the time. The same story. I say, I was under the shower in 2017, and I look at my wallet, and I was super rich, and I should have sold some of it. And I will be in a very better position if I did that. I didn't, and I still regret it. I think it was not smart for me to do that. And I thought this time is different. But, liquidity is now there. We are in a very red area. We always go down. There is always a price correction. So it's up to you. Nobody can tell you're wrong. If you study all these, you come to a conclusion, you make a plan. Make a plan. Start now. We are not in the bull run yet. Make a plan. What am I going to do? Like I say, if you don't want to sell, one thing you will say, you know what? I'm putting money aside. When we're reaching 60, I'm still continuing to put, instead of, you can still even do it offline with USDT. I'm going to buy some USDT. I'm going to move it in my wallet. And when the price cools down, I'm going to buy more Bitcoin, because now you have more cash available and you can get a better price. So this is another way that you can use the power law. There is one more indicator that I want to show you. Is this volatility one. It's really cool. So this is another way of representing the power law. We call it adaptive power law. This one is basically adapting, and a little bit more is instead of having a fixed value for the slope, it's considering also the local behavior. And you see what happens here. It allows us to find supports. Instead of doing it by hand and drawing the support and resistance level by hand, it does it via mathematics. It's like in general, for the power law, for Bitcoin to be a power law, it needs to spend a lot of time doing power law things. And so it needs even locally to follow the power law. And you can see how it does it, right? There are times where it follows the power law. It's a deviation. The middle one is the real trend. But here it was close to the support line, right? In fact, actually was touching the support line. When he left the support line, he found another support line that was parallel to the power law. So when we say that it's really behaving like a power law, we really mean it. And even in between, it does power law things. It follows the power law. So you can identify local support and resistance areas. Here, this was more like a resistance. The price corrected itself. It didn't want, it was not ready to go there. It touched it here. And then it went back, other resistance. It went there, used this as the support. I mean, how this can be due to by chance is too much. Like, go back and check so many opportunities. Not, sure, it could be your eyes trying to find patterns, but we can even calculate this. On a certain point, I could calculate how much Bitcoin spends being actually a real power law, following locally the power law. It will not be the same slope. I mean, it's the same slope, but not a y-axis, right? Because it's a deviation from the trend. And in fact, you see how the power law itself was a resistance. It didn't like to go there. It corrected itself, So it's really cool. But also this indicator here is basically shows the returns. What are the returns? The returns are price today over price yesterday. And now it works really only with days. I'm going to improve it where you can use any time frame. So you could work on 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It should work at every level, because this is also the property of the power law. It's not just a straight line. It's a statistical property of Bitcoin. So for example, you see the blue line. The blue line is what the returns. So basically return, right? So it's a ratio between the price today, the price yesterday. If it is above 1, it means that that day was a good day. You made money owning Bitcoin. If it is below 1, it means you were losing. And of course, it matters how many of these days in a sequence you have, right? When we go up, you have many days above 1, right? Where your return is above 1. When we are going down, many days in the row, in average, right? That are below 1. And you see, look, the blue line is what the theory, what if Bitcoin was truly a power law, it will follow that blue line. The returns are going down. So we had huge, big returns early on, like in 2010, 2011. And of course, the white line is actually the real returns. The gray lines are daily returns, like instantaneous daily return. The white line, it's something that is basically an average, and you can decide what the average is, right? We can go here on the little bolt. The little bolt allows you to kind of change the parameters. So right now, for example, we are using a 60 days moving average for the returns. We could use, let's say, 100 days, right? And it's going to be smoother, you see. It's going to be smoother. I'm going to reset. And so, these are the average returns. And you see how the average returns, let's see, what am I doing? I can do A. Okay. If I do A, no, I need to. Just give me a second. I'm going to reset it so I can see better. What are the red and green lines? Are huge, big deviations, like one standard deviations from the general trend. Okay, so now this see how in average, right? Because we have also these bubbles, etc. So the returns are influenced, right? If I calculate the returns after the last 2 months, and they do it at the peak, of course, that return will be really big. If I do it at the bottom, it will be really small. But you see how in average, they follow the blue line. And the blue line is the theoretical value due to the power law. So it's much more than some kind of fitting line. It's something very deep about the statistical property of Bitcoin. The diminishing returns are real. You can see it here. They go down. Now, as in the beginning, they were going down very quickly, and then they are going down, but much slower. So nothing to worry about. We are still doing 46% a year. This is giving us the return per day. So the return per day right now, due to the power law by itself, is about 0.1% per day. During the bubble, we are going, so 0.1% per day. If you compound it over 1 year, it's about 46%. It will take several years, about 10 years before we go down to something like 20%. But this, you can calculate exactly, this blue line tell us what are the daily returns, and this curve very slowly is going down. Eventually, like I say, I want to see if we can do it with years or months. Will be really cool. Right now it works with days. So these are the gray ones, are the daily instantaneous. If there is a spike above a red or green line, that is kind of a signal that the price is overvalued or undervalued, so maybe it's associated with a dip, etc. The white line is an average, right? So what did I do here? I draw two lines that are interesting and significant. So first of all, identify a range. So I showed from December of the end of the year of this year 24 all the way to the end of 25. This is where we are expecting the bull to happen, right? In this area, in this region of the graph. And I drew this green and purple line. What does purple, green, and purple line mean? The green line, because we know, right, even see from the full model, we know where to expect the peak and how big the peak is going to be, around 200,000. We can calculate, given that we know that is an exponential growth, that is it lasts about 1 year, we can calculate what kind of returns we expect to reach that 200,000. So that is actually about 0.33. So about 3 times what the power law by itself says. And this is another way of thinking why it's such a good idea to try to lock in some of these gains, because for 1 year, even with these diminished tops, because just to give you an idea, during the last bubble, it was more like 0.48 per day. The previous one was 1.06%. I mean, go and check what is 1.06% compounded over 1 year. It's crazy, right? It's many, many times. This is why people could make a lot of money buying at the bottom and selling at the top if you could do that. And the first bubble, even more, it was like 1.16, something like that, something crazy. When you compound that, you get crazy returns. This time we are lower than we had the last time, 0.48%. It's more like 0.3%. 33%. So that is the green line. So the utility and the usefulness of this indicator is that, first of all, we are going to expect that nice white line to go, first of all, above the blue one. That is what we are expecting, just to continue on the power law. Why is below? Because we were going down. We was no parallel. If it was parallel to the power law, we will have been. See how here was kind of a parallel to the power law, because for some time we kind of coast along the power law, and then we started to go down, in fact, below the power law. This is why we go below. And now this is going to revert. Again, we are hoping this reversion will happen here during November. And then it's a way of monitoring if we are on track, because if we are on track and we are going towards this 200,000, this white line should be above a green line. Sometimes it can dip, sometimes it can go above, but in average should stay for the entire year above that. So, and we can check if actually we're doing better or worse. We don't have to wait until the top to tell that we are going to reach the top within a few months, because we need enough dates to do the averaging. Give me a second. I'm going to take a sip of water. We need enough data, to do the averaging. And I think within 2 months, 1 or 2 months, of course, we can do these meetings on a regular basis, and I can show you where we are, etc. But see, we're going to monitor these and say we can extend. We should do like dots, the little dots, and show the extension of these two graphs. And one is reaching 200,000, and I also, for curiosity, drew the purple line that is 500,000. So if we go above it, purple line, we are more going towards 500,000 instead of 200,000, and anything in between. And that one, to give you an idea, is more like 0.66, so almost twice what we are doing, what we are supposed to do during the bull market. My prediction. So my prediction is that every day, in average, we should get returns of about 0.33% per day. And if we do it consistently, sure, we are going to have ups and downs. For 1 year, one entire year, we should reach 200,000. If we are more than that, we will have a high. And because it's relatively consistent, we should be able to tell, right, by following that line where we are going, basically. Hopefully, I don't have any problem, because it's not really the core of the power law theory to predict these bubbles, just like a module, like an add-on. I don't have any problem to go towards 500. It will be more cash to get to buy more Bitcoin when we crash, because we will crash, believe me. Maybe we crash at 300, maybe we crash at 500. Hopefully, we are not below that green line, because if we are below, then we can always push up at the last minute, but we really never done that too much. It's very relatively consistent. So I hope that we stay above that green line, or hovering above the green line, and not below. So this is the indicators that gives us kind of a review of where we are. Everything is fine. We are exactly where we should be. I'm expecting to see more of these. Maybe there will be other corrections. It's very difficult. This is a part of a model where it's more difficult to make predictions. We could have predicted, and I kind of said many times that I was expecting some kind of correction because it was not the right timing. And you see, actually, the power law was almost like a resistance level, right? When the price reached there, and it needed to correct, because if for the power law to be correct, you need to follow certain patterns. That is, okay, we go up during the bull market, but we do it at the right timing. And so it looks like we are going, to do these oscillations. I'm not expecting anything crazy. Nove, like many analysts say, it's the beginning of a bull market. They said anytime we went up a little bit, the bull market was supposed to start for them. Everybody forgets, like they have so short memories, and they still follow the same guy that says that like 5 times. And then, we are going to crash to 20,000, and we didn't crash to 20,000. We are not going to do neither. We are probably, if anything, continue right on this like line. We are going to meet the liquidity somewhere, and then we are going to update. We are going to see what happens. We are going to check. And my prediction is that we will see at that point. Yes, we will see the price starts to go up. I don't think we need to go all the way to the support. Last time that happened, we needed a COVID as a correction. I think, if anything, maybe we are going to do this little game going down. That price, just if you're curious, is more like 55. So we are going to see oscillation between 60, 52, back and forth. I have positions where I'm doing DCA down when these things happen, and I made $3,000 in the last few weeks by, without doing any crazy thing, or without jeopardizing my hodling positions. But, if you know what you're doing, you can make money by this little dip. There is nothing wrong, because now I have $3,000 more to buy Bitcoin. So you can actually use situations like these if you know what to do. do it in a very careful, very aware way. Without, I think you get in trouble when people have these huge, big 100 leverage, crazy, stupid degen things. Bitcoin is too wonderful to do degen things, but Bitcoin is also volatile. It's part of its nature, and there is nothing wrong in using that volatility. It's not for everybody. We are not saying everybody should do that, but if you want to put the time, you want to put the energy, you want to study, you can. Okay, and then the goal is only one. We want more and more Bitcoin. So that kind of does it. Sorry if it took so long time, like always. And I'm going to take some questions, if there are some questions, and then we can end here. Joe is asking, are there any other cryptocurrencies? Right now, my answer is no, because there is one candidate that sometimes people mention, if you are curious, is Kaspa, that seems to follow a little bit of a power law. The only problem with that is to be really honest in claiming that something follows a power law, you need several orders of magnitude. With Bitcoin, we have only even if you focus only on the data that we are using for these charts, is 6 orders of magnitude, basically a million fold. Bitcoin changed by a million fold. That is what the power laws are very good in showing how something changes over many orders of magnitude. With something like Kaspa, you don't have that, and so claiming that Kaspa follows a power law is not correct. We will have to monitor. We will have to see is a possible candidate. If it happens, why? What is going on? Why? What are the similarities? What are the differences? For sure, it's growing slower than Bitcoin. Bitcoin is, the power law is 6 in time. The Kaspa one is more like 4. But maybe say something, like, okay, you're trying to be like Bitcoin, but you're not really like Bitcoin. But it's interesting. But it's really the only case that I found that even comes close. Everything else, no. And you'll say, why? Well, because Bitcoin is unique. Bitcoin is a proof of work. Many of these are not. The network properties, there are not many Litecoin conferences where 20,000 people and 2 presidential candidates showed up. It's only Bitcoin. And same thing with gold, NASDAQ. They all follow exponential paths that are very unsustainable. They are associated usually with bad things. Exponential grow fast and then they crash. And a lot of the exponential growth of all these other assets is mostly inflation. It's not that NASDAQ goes up because the stocks get more valuable. It's because the dollars goes down. And so even if you are exponential, because there are exponential, they are relatively slow growing exponential relatively to the power law. So the power law beats them. Now, if you allow enough time, an exponential always catches up relatively to a power law, but it will take many decades. So by the time, hopefully, nations adopt Bitcoin, becomes we have a Bitcoin standard, so we don't have to worry about that. But for the next 20 years, let's focus 10 years by 10 years, right? It's already incredible that we can make predictions over 5 years. And by the way, it's something that I need to remind all the time. We are making predictions. People don't realize. They say, oh, we will see. Well, we already saw that Bitcoin, the power law, has worked because, if I have to show you on the chart, if we go back to this chart, I have to show you on the chart when this model, I found my first Bitcoin, the power laws in 2013, but we were about price and addresses, transactions and price. This particular one, I found it in 18. In fact, I found it here. So all these, starting from here to there, right? We can even mark it somehow. Let's mark it so you can see. Okay, so all these, it's already predicted. Okay, all these are already predicted. Okay, so this is already predicted. In fact, it was a little bit I even have a post. At that time, I was very active on Facebook because X was nothing in terms of there was not really a strong X community at that time. At least I didn't know. But I was posting on Facebook. I got the bottom. I have actually a post where I say, "Oh, we reached the bottom, guys." I put it in my X many times, and all this, it's real-time prediction done after the discovery of a power law. So many people don't think or not aware about that. And so it's the only one right now that seems to follow this particular pattern. So it's pretty cool, because it says how unique Bitcoin is. Yeah, it helped. I say, I have Luciano say, the graph of the power law helps me, guide me. Yeah, exactly, right? You have all this information, you have all this knowledge, and to me, even personally, it's almost like I was driving in a car without the lights on. There was fog, there was rain. I didn't know where the heck I was going, what is going up. And sure, I trusted that Bitcoin was going up, but I didn't know where we were in the cycle, what is going to happen next, what to expect. And now everything seems so clear. Now, is it going to happen exactly like we say? Let's see, right? I already look, it really worked, right? We didn't could have predicted this. No, we don't know the bottom, yes, but the fact that he left the bottom and he went up, well, we could have predicted that it was not the right timing and he should have had a correction that he had, and then when 9 happened, or 9 o'clock happened, the bull run started. Could we have predicted that we had the two bubbles? No, but we could have said, well, this bubble, it's a little bit too early. Maybe we are going to have another one, right? And then, you know what? Even the height of this bubble, yes, we could have predicted, because if you use the 3 first bubble, you get this bubble within few $1,000s. So we could have predicted the top of that bubble. I didn't do it because this new method came out recently. So we are adding more and more knowledge. But right now we are making a prediction. Remember, everything is based on this idea that everything is going to repeat like before. If it doesn't, then we will have to see. But it's not that it's not worth it, even in that case, because we will see and say, oh, something is different this time, right? Because we have something to compare with. So it's still very useful in that case. Like we could say, wow, something is different this time. We are going very much higher relatively to where we are predicting. We are going much lower. I hope that support line is never broken, because it gives us really, as Bitcoiners, like a very strong reference point. And I think there is something very physical that has to do with mining and the cost of production. So I think that support line is never going to be broken. But, believe me, I'd rather have these, not because I made it up, I discovered it more than made it up. I hope is continuing to give us guidance. It's actually, I want to trust Bitcoin, that Bitcoin found the best way to grow, this power law growth, and it has its own internal wisdom to do this, and it will continue to do, because yes, we're not going to have a Bitcoin that is $10 million in a month from now, in a year from now. It's going to happen. That is the important thing, right? If we have to wait 9 years for 1 million, if we have to wait 20 years for 10 million, it's okay. I'm going to be here. I'm going to stick around and telling you about the power law, and you will have to listen to me for the next 20 years, guys. Do you remember 20 years ago when I told you this and this other? I was right. So it will be fun. I think we are in good hands. Bitcoin is amazing. That is the bottom line. Are these deviation lines Guptron? I'm going to answer this question, and then let's thank you for all the good messaging, to all the support. So we sell in the 180. Look, we are going to have this continuously. So first of all, if you want to join my because I need to advertising, but hopefully something that you find useful. Okay, so it's self-promoting, but you can go here, and if you go here, you can find the indicators. Right now, just to give you an idea, it's everything through Patreon, because I'm trying to do it in the most ethical possible way. You join, costs only $5 to join Patreon. It doesn't give you all the indicators. All the indicators are only $20. I'm going to make more indicators, one for MicroStrategy, and I have this deal with the Patreon supporters that I will never charge you more, unless inflation goes crazy or something happens, but it will be always $20. So you join, you come to the Discord. We have a very nice community, almost like 700 people right now. We discuss with each other. We have everything is free. Once you come in the, I spend some time 2 or 3 hours discussing things with people. It's not mandatory. If you like, if you don't like, we read the book, scale together. So there are a lot of things to help you and support you. Okay, so don't worry. And I will have also for the public videos like these where I will tell you what is going on, but make a plan. So the plan could be like this, right? You say, look, I'm going to use this indicator from 0 to 100, and when we come, I don't know, maybe I'm going to do some calculation eventually to see what is optimal. But right now could be a good idea where, let's say you decide ahead of time that I'm not going to sell more than 10%. I don't feel confident. Let's try this silly thing, of selling my Bitcoin. And I'm going to sell 10%. And you say, okay, when I'm close to 70, I'm start to sell whatever difference, right? So 10%, you divide it equally. So maybe let's do it simple, like 80, right? So 80, when I will reach 80, I'm going to sell 5%, every time we go up by 5%, whatever it, I don't know. I'm trying to do it in my head, right? But you know what I mean, right? There is 20% if you want to sell 2%. Every time we go, you sell 2%. And little by little, you're selling a little bit, and doing it in that way. If we are missing, if we are going higher than 200,000, you're still going to have enough Bitcoin to make even more money, right? So you're not going to miss it in that way. Now, it's not ideal because, of course, it will be better to pinpoint the top, but in this way, you're doing it more gradually. So that is a possible approach. Or you wait until we go above 100, because it seems all the other peaks were about close to 100. Or it depends on you. So take a journal and write down what is your plan, and you can update it, but that is the best approach, right? Make a plan ahead and say, okay, when this is going to happen, I will do this. Same thing when you go down, right? Are you going to buy until we reach the green? That is a possibility, but you can say, I'm going to start to buy when we go below 40. And it's supposed to happen at this particular time. When we reach that, I'm going to look at all the other indicators, and then I'm going to have this plan where I'm going to buy every time we go down by a certain value of this indicator. I'm going to buy a little bit more. And then you sell your shares, everything when we reach 0, right? You get a second job, you do extra hours, because that will be the best time when you want to buy Bitcoin, right? So you make a plan. And the beauty of having all this knowledge is that now you have something to support your decisions, where before you were just guessing. That is Paolone, viva la figa. Yeah, true. That is even more important than the power law, right? That is for the Italian. You guys don't know what is la figa. So maybe you can check it out. Paolone is funny. We had an interview in Italian with Paolone. He's a very good Bitcoiner. Okay. So yes. And Adam wants to subscribe. You have a link there. And if you get stuck somewhere in the process, it should be relatively simple. Just DM me on X and we'll help you. how these deviation lines calculated, it wasn't clear. Yeah, the deviation lines are like basically simple deviations. You can do it more sophisticated using standard deviation, but it's basically certain percentages. It turns out that support is about 60% from the trend. This is where it is, but there are more sophisticated way. We are always trying to find the simplest possible way to do something and then verify if there is a more sophisticated way of doing it. But usually the simplest way, in particular with TradingView, because TradingView is a little bit limited in terms of calculations, etc. So we always try to do this thing that seems to work, but these are basically deviations both on top and on bottom. The deviation from the bottom, it's very, very precise. It's always 60% for some reason. The deviation from the top, because the tops are this decay, are more difficult. But this is why, for example, we have this nice indicator that if you correct for that decay, then it does look like 0 to 100. So it's really cool. So that is very consistent. Anyway, guys, it took almost like 1 hour and a half. Let me answer this question, then we really end here. I love to interact with you guys. I will do this whole night. One time with Paolone's group, we did it for like, how long did it go? 5 hours, 10 hours? And we started to talk about extra dimensions, astral journeys. Maybe one day we do this on YouTube. We started to talk about quantum mechanics, all kind of crazy stuff. But let's focus on Bitcoin. So the last question. Let's take this last question. The support resistance right are at static deviation. Yes, because it seems to work. It's just like a straight 60% from the trend. So that's what seems to work. Now, there are other people that tried more, and myself, there is a method called ransack where you can try to eliminate the outliers. You can do it with what is called percentile regression, and all of them kind of converge to the same result. That is another way where when you know that you are into something where you do the same thing 3, 4, 5 different ways, because the power law, I did it many different ways. I don't know if you follow my work. I did it where I'm sampling different ratios of the price and ratios of time and in a random way, and then you get the power law. So not just a regression line. We did it so many different ways. I use network theory, and then you get always the same result. Then okay, maybe it's true. Maybe there is something true. But yeah, the simplest way that you can also do it, right? Because we give you the equation, you can say there is this very nice app that you can use because it's a graphing calculator. It's called Desmos. You can look it up. I even have also. I need to have a place where I have all these things, together as a resources for people. If you go in the Discord, there is a channel with all these resources, but also for the rest of the public. And you can calculate through the formula that I gave you, right? This formula here. Basically, the price is 10 to the minus 17. You can put in a scientific calculator and then use days, 5.82. This formula. It's crazy that Bitcoin can be expressed by a simple formula like that, right? It's absurd. This is how magical Bitcoin is. Days in this case is days from the Genesis block. And to get that, just ask ChatGPT, or ChatGPT or even Google, just type how many days is how I do it. How many days from January 3. ChatGPT knows what Genesis block is. Google not so much. But you say how many days from January 3, 2009, and it gives you a number. You substitute that number in days, do it on Desmos or some other graphing calculator or scientific calculator, and it's going to give you the reference, right? You can If you want future days, just put a future date. You can put today, you can put the past. You can see, okay, when Bitcoin reached $1, when it reached $10. If this formula comes very, very close, it's so crazy. But you can do it in the future, right? And then you say, okay, where the support line is. And so you take 60%, you multiply by that by 0.6, right? So if you get a particular value, do you want to do it? You guys want to do it for today? So I can show you how to do it. So let's do that for today, right? I'm going to put that formula, and you go under. So you guys, if you want to do it together with me, you can follow me along. So I'm going to ask Google. I'm going to say, how many days from today, from January 3, 2009, because this is when Bitcoin was created, right? And it tells me 5,732 days. So I'm going to my calculator, and I'm going to write price equal 10 to the minus 17 times 5,732 days. And then I take the power of 5.82. Okay. And what that gives me, it's $74,000 basically. So that is the trend line, right? When you take that value and you multiply by 0.4, because we're talking about going down by 60%, right? So that will be 40% of the trend line, and that is about 29,000, right? 30,000 if we want to round it up. Did you follow me through? Were you able to follow my calculation? I can put it in the chat here. You put this number here like that, right? And you get 74,000. So that is the trend line. And you can follow along, right? You can try yourself. 74,000, you take 60%, so you take 74,000 and you multiply by 0.4, right? That basically will be a 60% change, and that it's more like 30,000. So that is the support line. Now, for the top, try to do it as a homework. I'm going to give you a homework being a professor. Check what the P is at this date, November, and let's say November 15, 25, right? So this is where the top is supposed to be. It could be 10 days later, it could be 10 days early, but as an exercise, everybody that follows the video, try to take a scientific calculator and calculate using the formula above these, and you will need to ask Google how many days from January 3, 2009 to this date. So get the new value, add it, use that instead of 5,732 and come up with a price. Then to get the top, okay, so once you get that value, take the top will be about, you multiply by 1.8, okay, because that is 80%. So 80% will be 1.8 times the value of a trend. This is how you get the top. And then 1 year later, if you want to do it, that we should go back to the support. So you can calculate what the trend line is at that date. So we go back the bottom. So the bottom, you can do all this. You should always verify. That is the beauty of what we are doing, that you can verify yourself. So the bottom, my projection should be November 26 is where the bottom is. So you can calculate what is the trend, and then you do it again, you do 0.4. And that will tell you where we go. So you can verify yourself, but when I did it, I was getting something close to 70,000. So basically, I'm telling you what is going to happen if everything repeats like before. That is the usual condition. We start the bull in November, we go to 200, then 1 year later, we go down to about 70,000. You can see, if you sell even a little bit at the top and rebuy at the bottom, you should be able to multiply your Bitcoin. Tax included, all the other consideration, because you're not going to do this every few minutes. You're going to do it over a very long period of time. So the taxes are not that bad, And in some countries, people don't pay taxes for this kind of thing. So if you have an IRA, if you're putting your Bitcoin, you're doing it with IRA, then you don't pay taxes, at least not right now. So, it's up to you. It's nice to have the information, right? Okay. All right. Thank you so much, guys, to follow and be patient and stay with me all this time and give me all your support, etc. It's really amazing and very motivating. Let's try to do this once a week, right? If you like. Let's meet next week. Thank you so much. Bye, guys.